From a weak little kid with big dreams all the way to a living legend that his name echoes throughout the Grand Line and beyond. These are all the forms of Roronoa Zoro in One Piece. Starting with his weakest form, Kid with Wado Ichimonji. Zoro was born in the East Blue to Terra and Roronoa Arashi, a descendant of the Shimotsuki family. By the time Zoro was 8 years old, his father had already been killed in a battle against pirates, threatening Shimotsuki village, and his mother had died of illness, leaving Zoro orphaned. At the village's dojo, he trained to be a swordsman. Even as a child, Zoro was strong enough to defeat most adults, but could not defeat Kuina, the daughter of the dojo's master, Koshiro. During a training session, Zoro met and talked with Kuina's grandfather, Shimotsuki Kozaburo, who gifted him a pair of swords to aid in his practice. The following year, while both Zoro and Kuina were training, the Revolutionary Army stopped by their dojo. At some point, Zoro came to Koshiro asking if it was true if swordsmen could cut through anything, and even steel, to which Koshiro confirmed. He then demonstrated to Zoro a piece of paper that he cut without it splitting, confusing Zoro. Koshiro then explained to Zoro that part of swordsmanship lies within a sword understanding the will of what the swordsman wishes to protect, and what and when he wishes to cut, further telling Zoro that a sword that cuts and injures anything it touches isn't a real sword. Zoro then told his sensei he would strive to become a swordsman that could cut through anything, making Koshiro question if he was listening at all. After Zoro and Kuina's 2000th fight, and respectively Kuina's 2000th victory, Zoro, now 10 years old, questioned why he still could not win against her, to which Koshiro suggested it could be due to their age difference, to which Zoro denied it, as he was able to defeat adults. At night, he challenged her in private for one more match with real swords. Although he had improved tremendously since their first match, he still lost and cried with frustration, telling Kuina about his dream to become the world's greatest swordsman. Hearing this, Kuina confided in Zoro, telling him that she shared the same dream but knew she could never attain it. Her father had told her that girls could never be true swordmasters and that her fighting potential would decrease as her body matured. Zoro, annoyed by her defeatist attitude, in spite of repeatedly winning against him, told her that one day he would beat her because he was more skilled, not because she was a girl. The two made a promise that either of them had to become the world's best swordsman, but the next day, Kuina suffered a fatal fall down the stairs of her dojo, much to Zoro's anger and disappointment. Realizing that she would never have a chance to fulfill her dream, Zoro took it upon himself, asking Koshiro for her sword, Wado Ichimonji, and began working to develop his signature three-sword style, holding his own two swords in each hand, and Kuina's clenched between his teeth. In his next form, Zoro gets lost, and the only way to bring him back so we can continue the video is by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. So yeah, you know what to do. Okay, so this was only the first form, and during the second one, well, he's basically an adult now, with Wado Ichimonji and two normal swords. Zoro is now a bounty hunter, but as it turns out, he's been captured by the Marines, and more precisely, by Axe Hand Morgan. On the 9th day of Zoro's restraint, Kobe and Monkey D. Luffy arrived in Shell's Town with the intentions of Kobe joining the Marines, and Luffy inviting Zoro to be his first crew member. They eventually arrived where Zoro was being held, in time to witness Rika trying to feed him some onigiri, which Zoro refused, most likely to avoid the girl being caught, as there was a sign forbidding anyone to aid Zoro. After a series of events, Luffy came back just in time to save him from a firing squad. Refusing to die, Zoro accepted Luffy's invitation and revealed his unique fighting style, aka the three-sword style. He also revealed his dream of becoming the best swordsman in the world, which Luffy supported, believing that the Pirate King should have the best in his crew. Overall, in terms of strength, even before joining Luffy, Zoro was infamous in the East Blue as a skilled swordsman feared by pirates, which shows he was already stronger than the average pirate or marine. Despite being tied up without food or water for days, he still had the willpower to stand tall and was ready to fight. Once freed, he easily defeated Morgan's Marines. Compared to East Blue standards, Zoro was near the top tier. However, he was still nowhere near Grand Line level. Which brings us to form number 3, Zoro butchered by Mihawk. As we mentioned, Zoro was not ready for the big boys yet. You see, after Zoro challenged Mihawk to a fight, well, let's just say that Zoro got violated. When Zoro faced Mihawk at the Baratier, it was the moment his dream was truly tested. He charged forward with everything he had, unleashing his strongest technique, but Mihawk's black blade Yoru cut straight through his guard and carved a massive wound across his chest, so deep that it should have ended him right there. Instead of falling, Zoro stood tall and swore he would never lose again until he surpassed Mihawk, earning even the world's greatest swordsman's respect. That injury became a defining scar, and when the crew later reached Arlong Park, it was still fresh, tearing open with every movement. Thus, the form we mentioned injured Zoro. Yet Zoro deliberately allowed himself to be captured just to infiltrate Arlong's base, and when he revealed his bandaged chest, the fishmen were stunned at the sheer size of the gash that had not killed him. Even Arlong recognized it as the mark of someone terrifying. Despite the pain, Zoro fought Hachan and Arlong's men with a body that shouldn't have been able to stand, let alone swing 3 swords. His blood may have stained the battlefield, but his eyes burned resolve. Zoro was still standing strong, even on the verge of death. So, after Zoro's recovery, it's time for him to receive a much-needed power boost. Here, we reach Logtown, where Zoro acquires both Sendai Kitetsu and Yubashiri. You see, eventually, Zoro learns of Dracul Hawkeye Mihawk, who held the title of the greatest swordsman in the world. He set off to sea, searching for Mihawk in order to challenge him to a duel. However, he lost his way and could not find his way back home. In order to survive on his own, he took on bounties to pay for living expenses. He quickly built a famous reputation for himself as a pirate hunter in the East Blue, and even in the Grand Line, as Baroque works had heard about him. He was even considered the greatest swordsman of the East Blue. However, Zoro was eventually captured by the Marines and left to die on a cross from starvation. Lucky for him, Luffy decided that he needed him and his crew, and thus, with the help of Kobe, managed to set him free. However, that next significant improvement came a few arcs later during Logtown. While walking down the street, Zoro witnessed Tashigi, a Marine swordsman who looked exactly like Kuina, beating some pirates. Upon entering the weapon shop, Zoro looked for 2 swords. The owner of the shop, however, tried to trick Zoro into selling the Wado Ichimonji for far less than its value, but Tashigi rushed into the shop and accidentally ruined the owner's ploy. Tashigi pointed out a cursed sword named Sendai Kitetsu to Zoro. Ipponmatsu told them about Kitetsu's cursed line, which interested Zoro, who then decided to buy the sword and test his luck against the sword's curse. He threw the sword up and held out his arm, but the sword circled around Zoro's arm and left him uncut. After witnessing Zoro's caliber, the owner threw Yubashiri for free, saying that this way he passed his dream to him. Zoro has now a complete collection of 3 overpowered swords. Wado Ichimonji, one of the 21 great grade swords, Sendai Kitetsu, one of the great swords, and Yubashiri, one of the 50 skillful great swords. And as a result, this set the stage for Zoro's 5th form, pre-timeskip Asura mode. You see, this form basically uses 9 swords and 3 heads, thus the name Asura, as this refers to the Hindu and Buddhist mythology of Asuras, a class of beings often described as powerful demigods or titans, who can either be benevolent or malevolent. These beings had 3 faces and 6 arms. 9 sword style is an extension of Zoro's spirit, and as the name suggests, involves 9 swords. Through sheer will, Zoro creates an illusion of 2 more heads and 4 more arms appearing on him, which wield copies of his swords for a total of 9 blades. At the same time, a 3-headed, 6-armed silhouette appears behind Zoro, making him resemble a demon god, aka Asura. Zoro's power grows threefold, as he can use his 9 swords to slice an opponent thrice more than usually, and Zoro tends to do so by rushing past his foe at high speeds. As with Zoro's other swordsmanship styles, 9 sword style encompasses of derivative techniques that Zoro can use after having created his demonic illusion of 9 swords. His first form was ghastly 9 sword style, Asura. To onlookers, it appeared as if Zoro gains an additional pair of heads and 4 more arms, all wielding duplicates of his swords, each appearing twice more, for 9 swords total. Zoro, holding his swords so that the blades are pointing toward the enemy, leaps towards them at great speed, powerfully slashes them with all 9 of his swords at once, and ends up behind the enemy's back, holding his blades in a manner that makes them look fanned out. The attack was strong enough to disperse Kaku's ultimate defense stances by turning the massive slash wave into mist, before cutting down Kaku himself in his half-giraffe form. His second known pre-timeskip with Asura was called Demonic 9 Flashes. It's an attack in which Zoro, in his Asura state, approaches the enemy to consequently slice them up with his 9 swords, before ending up in a stance that has the blades resemble a wheel shape. The attack was first seen in use against the Pacifista PX-4, breaking through its harder-than-steel armoring to draw blood from the cyborg. Next up is kind of a funny one if you ask me, but definitely one distinct form Zoro took during the series. Let's talk about Zombie Zoro. You see, the Straw Hats arrive in Thriller Bark. During the Straw Hats' journey through the Florian Triangle, the crew stumbles upon Brook. Naturally, like any wise man would do, upon seeing a literal skeleton speaking, Luffy's first thought was to ask him to join their crew. But when it comes to the plot of this arc, Brook had his shadow stolen by the warlord Gecko Moria, and while Zoro's strength was shown in a very different way when his shadow was also stolen and implanted into the corpse of the legendary samurai Jigoro of the wind. The result was a bizarre zombie Zoro, a stubby, awkward-looking swordsman who nevertheless moved with Zoro's instincts, swinging blades with familiar stances and even mimicking his three-sword style techniques, despite lacking Zoro's body or precision. Jigoro stumbled through Zoro's attacks, but the fact that he could fight at all proved how deeply Zoro's swordsmanship was ingrained in his very spirit. It was both comedic and unsettling, a twisted reflection of Zoro's identity, walking around in another body. And for form number 7, we have to switch a sword one more time. It's time for Zoro to acquire Shusui. Here, Nami, Usopp, and Chopper expose Hogback's corpse experiments, while Moria rips out Luffy's shadow to resurrect the ancient giant Oars as his rampaging puppet. The crew splits to recover their shadows and friends, with Zoro being faced against the samurai zombie Ryuma. You see, Ryuma was a distant ancestor of his, even though Zoro didn't know it at the time. Zoro challenged the zombie samurai and grew to like his sword, the Meito Shusui, and challenged him to acquire it. The two fought fiercely, and eventually, Zoro defeated Ryuma. Set aflame, Ryuma accepted defeat and decided to give Zoro his sword, heavily believing that the soul of the sword would be most satisfied to serve under the man who defeated its preceding owner. Zoro then replied that it was alright that the zombie lost, as long as he was ashamed. Zoro stated he would have liked to have known Ryuma while he was still alive, and accepted the samurai's sword as a gift of honorable defeat. However, Zoro praised the zombie when he felt he brought shame to the body of a samurai. Even while it was dying, it still retained the honorable spirit of a swordsman. Zoro stated that he would just pretend the fight he had with the samurai's desecrated corpse never happened. During his fight, Yubashiri was destroyed, and thus replaced with an even better sword, Shusui. Next up is a form that still remains a mystery to this day. Post-timeskip Zoro with one eye closed. During his 2-year timeskip training, Zoro also learned from Mihawk how to imbue his swords with armament haki. In order to achieve that, Mihawk forbade him from having any alcohol until he had mastered doing so. After 2 years of training, Zoro, with Perona's help of course, since he could never do it on his own, returned to Sabaody Archipelago. Shaki told him that he was the first to return. He went to a fishman, saying that he was bored and wanted to fish, and accidentally went on a coated pirate ship instead of the fisherman's boat. And why do I mention this? Because you'll realize just how much stronger he's become. You see, he fell asleep on their ship as the coated ship submerged. He was found by Sanji when the ship resurfaced, with him sitting on one of the broken masts. After he cut the whole ship in half with his blade, upon waking up, Zoro decides to aura farm a bit as well, and tells the unfortunate pirates to blame fate for him being on their ship. He then casually states that he had boarded the wrong ship. Zoro and Sanji meet and obviously start fighting. Then, they hear about a commotion coming from a nearby group. When they go to see what it is, they find Luffy there, along with the Marines, the Pacifistas, and the crew of the fake Straw Hat crew. After quickly defeating a Pacifista, another further statement to how much stronger all of the Straw Hats, including Zoro, had become during the time skip, they briefly start arguing about whose blow actually finished it off. Briefly, after Zoro and Sanji get reacquainted with Luffy, the crew submerges on their coated ship and heads for Fishman Island. There, the main villain of that arc is Hody Jones. And what does Zoro do? Almost ends the arc on his own. Even though Zoro is at a disadvantage being underwater and without a flutter kit coating, the swordsman manages to deal a striking blow to Hody Jones that almost leaves him for dead. Yeah, Zoro once again has advanced incredibly in terms of strength, and yet the biggest advance in power level came with the next form, Wano and Enma. While in Wano, Zoro encountered Hiyori, who was under attack by Orochi's men. Zoro cut them down and protected her. After taking care of their threat, he decided to go to Ryuma's grave and gave Shusui back, which he previously lost. Zoro and Hiyori returned to Oihagi Bridge the next day, and Zoro overwhelmed Yukimaru in their rematch. When Zoro reobtained Shusui, Hiyori requested that Zoro leave Shusui in the possession of Wano. Zoro initially objected, but she offered to give him Enma, a Meito of the same quality that once belonged to her father, as a replacement. As Zoro took the blade, a considerable amount of armament haki was drawn out from his arm. However, Zoro managed to take control over Enma and regulate the amount of haki it drew before it could sap him of all his strength. He then tried to cut a tree with the blade, but to his shock, accidentally unleashed a cut powerful enough to slice off the entire cliff face. For the next 5 days, Zoro trained with Enma to improve his control over the Meito. And well, let's just say that this power boost was well worth it. You see, Enma is among the best swords in the world. Kozuki Sukiyaki had described Enma as able to cut through the bottom of hell. Kozaburo himself deemed Enma to be his best masterpiece in comparison to all his other creations, including Wado Ichimonji. Enma has the distinct trait of releasing its wielder's armament haki, otherwise known as Ryuo, in Wano, in excessive amounts, cutting more than intended. As such, it has become infamous as a sword impossible to wield and master, so much so that no one aside from Kozuki Oden could tame Enma. During the battle on Onigashima, Kaido had sensed a strange haki emanating from Enma, producing a flame flame-like aura whenever Zoro started releasing its power. It worried Big Mom, who even warned Kaido to dodge, who noted it bared Odin's presence, causing him to recognize it as his sword. Applied on his techniques, it allowed Zoro to wound Kaido in dragon form, leaving a permanent scar on him in human dragon form. Then, later deal significant damage to and defeat a Lunarian. When combined with Zoro's newly added ability to use Conqueror's Haki, Zoro is now considered one of the big boys. And for the final form of Zoro for now, we have his post-timeskip Asura mode. How is this different from the previous Asura mode we analyzed though? Well, Zoro is now stronger, has access to armament and Conqueror's Haki, has better swordsmanship skills, and is also equipped with better swords. By the time of Wano, Zoro's Asura mode had evolved into something far beyond the illusionary power he once used against Kaku in Eni's lobby. When he activated it against Kaido on the rooftop of Onigashima, his aura split into 9 sword-wielding arms, each infused with an overwhelming presence of Haki. This wasn't just a visual trick anymore. Kaido himself felt the force of Zoro's spirit and was left with no choice but to try to avoid the attack rather than tank it like he normally does in battle. He also noted in shock that Zoro had used Supreme King Haki in the attack as well, which confused Zoro as he himself was unaware he possessed it. In a single strike, Zoro's Asura, Dead Man's Realm, cut deep into Kaido's body, leaving a scar alongside Odin's, something almost no one else had managed. What made this feat even more terrifying was that Zoro did it while already battered from battle. In Wano, Asura became the ultimate expression of his resolve, pushing Zoro closer than ever to the level of the world's strongest swordsman. Click on this video next, where I'm explaining the 30 most satisfying moments in One Piece you probably forgot even happened. Go on, check it out!